All right. Okay. 10 a.m. in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. Time for the UniCheck webinar. Thank you all who are here already. I see Lord and I see Pichu. If I can ask you guys to mute your microphones when you're not talking to avoid feedback and interference. And then if you would like to say something, just unmute your microphone. So this way it will be a cleaner sound channel. And I'm very happy to welcome our guest here today, Ivan Klimenko, out of UniCheck. Before we get into all the details, let me talk a little bit about how we envision today's webinar in terms of the procedures and content, and we'll see how it goes. So this is the second webinar with UniCheck this semester. In fact, that's probably like the 6th webinar altogether. But in any case, that's the second one this semester, at least for the early track. And so we already had a webinar when the company introduced itself and talked about the products. And we have a few questions online. We may say a few words or may ask a few questions and hear a few words about those questions. But the goal today is not so much to learn about the company and the product and the challenge, but rather receive feedback from the company on what the students have already completed. So for the early track, you guys have been working on the challenge for about 7 weeks now, right? You have one more week, a little bit more time to finish your reports. Many of you are pretty much done. I was looking at your last week's submissions, and many of you have sizable documents that only need some polishing before you finalize your reports. And so the hope here is that we will be able to present to the company what you have so far, and then receive some feedback. So you can use that feedback in the remaining 10 days or 11 days that you have, so you can use it to polish your report some more, to make them better, and to submit high quality work. Now, I already see we have 3 students in the webinar room here. Welcome, Lord, Nimesh, and Pichu. Very nice to meet you. And I see that we have quite a few people watching online. Many people who are watching online are probably people from the late track, for whom the project started just a week ago. So I assume they wouldn't have anything to present. But again, if you would like to talk to us, feel free to join, click on that presenter link and join us here. For the early track especially, if you are here, if you're watching, so click on the presenter link, don't be shy, join us in the room, tell us what you're working on, tell us what challenges you've encountered so far, tell us what ideas you have, and we will try to give you feedback. I have also prepared, and I'm not sure if we're going to have time for that, but I have also prepared the submissions the early track provided last week. And so we will take a look at some representative submissions or drafts, and we'll try to comment on them. And on top of that, I also downloaded all the reports for UniCheck from the last semester. The company has participated 1 or 2 times now already. And so we will look, if we have time, at the last semester's submissions, and perhaps also talk a little bit about why some are better than others, what makes them better, and get some feedback that way. Presumably your work this semester will not be too different, so whatever errors your predecessors made, you don't have to make them again. You will hear what they are, and you will be able to avoid them. And so maybe I'll give Ivan just a few minutes first to introduce himself properly, but also second, maybe say a few words about how his experience been so far. Have you received much, I don't know, feedback, questions, comments from the students? What are the typical issues that they've been struggling with? Maybe even if you remember from the last semester, if you remember some things that you liked or didn't like right away, maybe you can comment on that a little bit. So basically any tips, any comments that students may use at this stage while they're finishing up the reports. Please.
Okay, thank you. My role at the UniCheck company right now, well, actually, I've held quite a few roles, and I've joined the company back in 2015, and since that time, I think it's my 6th or 5th role. So earlier I've joined as a support representative, but then I moved quickly to the business department, and I've held a couple roles there. And right now I lead our partnerships department, so I no longer deal with the technical parts of the product, but more create our team that is focused on partnerships. So we have a sales team that works with direct sales, and we have partnerships teams that works with partners who in the end also have end customers. And there are different types of partners that we work, which could be LMS vendors, ad tech providers, a combination of those. And whichever company that is in need of our service or can resell the service, etc. Thank you for the introduction, Vasil. So I'm really glad that so many people, as far as I know, around 750 people chose us, and that's about 120 teams.
Yep.
I believe that's more than average rates, and this shows that students feel that this topic and this company and this service is something that they can understand and something that they can work with and really make, I would say, deliver real practical results in terms of either research or signing deals or entering doors for potential partnerships in this area, because they understand this market, or I would say this environment, student and learning environment, educational sphere, and that's probably easier for them rather than working on some kind of exotic product and exotic company. So basically, last year, we focused primarily on researches for the company, marketing strategy, sales strategy, how to overcome problems of that period. And we as a company grow pretty fast. We have basically doubled our customer base for the last year, so our growth rate is about 100%. And
wow, that's very impressive.
And challenges of this year are different than from the previous year. Earlier, we struggled with things like I would say brand perceptions, quality of the product, number of integrations and platforms that we support. We didn't have a marketing strategy. We didn't have a specific sales strategy. So to speak, we had a product, but we didn't really know how to pack it in a way that our end customers would choose us among competitors, and we didn't have, I would say, sales or global sales strategy. So with this year, much has changed. We have now a pretty specific sales strategy. We have a strong marketing department. We have done a rebranding. So UniCheck is the new name. Currently, we all get accustomed now to only this name. Formerly, we were called Unplug, and this name had different issues along with it, like pronunciation for Western countries, associations, etc. So we've moved away from any negative kind of which is a negative particle, to positive things like UniCheck. UniCheck stands for universal, unique, united, and that's all about our product and all about our business. The challenges that we face right now, I would say, is creating products for different niches in the markets. It's still brand recognition since we've done the renaming, and we need to know how to present our brand in the proper way, how to differentiate us from our competitors, and how to reach out to those decision makers so that they hear about our brand and make a decision about contacting us, or we would somehow proactively reach to them for them to make our system basically a default system in their institution. And this year is primarily for us an expansion year in terms of market acquisition. We want to enter new markets. We want to increase our competitiveness in existing markets. And as I've mentioned probably in the first webinar, our primary market is United States, but that's probably half of our sales. The other half of our sales is all over the world. And we work in Europe, in Latin America, in Africa, New Zealand, Australia. So wherever you are, you can find potential niches, potential customers. And if you're not doing the practical part of this project, you could still have a lot of, you could still find a lot of, I would say, a lot of information and opportunities for doing proper research, which is the first part of our project this year. Yeah, so that basically has been a quick demo, quick intro into the challenges of the past year and the challenges of this year. The traction of the company is really great. We don't lose customers. So literally, we had only probably maybe one refund for the last year, and the refund only happened because either customer didn't use the service, and that's why they didn't continue the subscription. Well, they bought a subscription but didn't investigate that very specific feature that they need, and in the end realized that they don't have it, but they have been informed properly. So we basically have nearly 100% retention rate, and to purchase our services.
That is actually very impressive. So talking about other companies in our competition as well as other companies we know, I mean, 100% rate growth and a growth rate and 100% retention. That's at least 100 or 10 times better than what we normally see. So that's quite impressive.
Yeah, but the younger, I mean, I would say, still sometimes we call it sort of a young company. Nowadays, even 5-year companies call themselves startups. So we are clearly still in a startup phase, but it's the 3rd year of the company on the market. And right now, we have understood our place in the world, our mission, what kind of products we want to make, what kind of niches we want to work in, how do we want to sell all these things, and effectively the pricing policies, the quality of support that we dedicate to. All of this is kind of clear now. So now the next year is the year of scaling, of even not just probably doubling our current customer base, but even tripling or quadrupling it, depending on the strategy that we choose. And we have a certain strategy, and I cannot tell everything on this call, but what I would say that this is the year of scaling our services.
Yeah, good luck with that. So now the students who are here, Lord, Nimesh, Pichu, are you guys able, interested, willing to share what you have so far and receive feedback? Are you here to tell us what you have and talk to us, or you're just here to listen? If you would like to talk now would be a good time. Unmute your microphone and tell us what you have in mind, or questions or comments. And so this way we know and can plan on that. And if not, also maybe let us know and we'll proceed with something else. So Lord, Nimesh, Pichu, are you planning to talk, or you're just here passively? So Nimesh says that he's just listening. That's fine. And I haven't heard from the other two. I assume you're also, that's fine. So, and I also see there are quite a few people watching on YouTube at this time, same thing. So if you would like to talk to us, just click on that presenter link and basically join us here right in the webinar room, and we'll give you a chance to talk. But while we are waiting for the volunteers, I would like to share my screen and maybe look at what the teams have submitted last week, and then ask for the feedback from Ivan on this work. So for example, one of the questions was, or one of the requirements almost, was to conduct a survey of the industry, figure out how it works, who the main players are, who the main competitors are, and then perhaps conduct something like a SWOT analysis, analyze the strengths and weaknesses of UniCheck compared to the competition. And obviously the company knows how the industry works, the company knows who the competitors are. So this stage was more for the students rather than for the company. And so, and this is why we some feedback. So
still it was a relevant.
Yeah.
Still, it was a relevant suggestion for smaller markets, for specific countries or regions, because they might have a very regional player, a company that has been existing there, for example, for 15 or 20 years, and everyone knows that company. And it would be very hard to beat that kind of brand unless you offer something really good in terms of pricing, in terms of features. And it would be very hard for those customers to really give up on their favorite or well-known company that they worked with.
Right, yeah. I should probably go first, even before we get to the analysis of the strengths and weaknesses, just to show you the types of markets the teams have been proposing. So we see a number of companies, a number of teams offer Argentina, at least one offers Azerbaijan, Brazil, Canada, Chile, France, Germany, India, Russia, South Korea, Ukraine. For some reason, the company is already in Ukraine.
But we do operate in Ukraine, that's right. I mean, that's a market for us also.
United Kingdom and the United States, the most popular one. So are those markets that you're open to, would consider moving into, are any of them more interesting than others?
Yes, primarily, well, first of all, there is a practicality like language and also the capacity, I mean, the volume of the market. Obviously, United States is one of the biggest markets in the world, if not the biggest. So that is our primary market. And then we go to other countries and other regions and continents. We have Europe, and basically every European country for us is a market, but you have to understand that some companies, sorry, some countries and some regions, they do really prefer either local players. They either have that local player, and you need to do SWOT analysis on that region to understand whether you can compete with them at this time or not. Or they would require a communication on in their language, and that would require an extension of our team, increase of payroll, total payroll, and of course the company has a strategy. We can work in all regions, all languages at the same time, except if they use English or other universal language that we speak here. And primarily right now it's English speaking world, and also the countries that give education in English, that produce educational materials, and that basically deliver educational services to students in English, at least in the part that where they need to verify student assignments for plagiarism, and that part is in English. So in that respect, we could work anywhere in the world, but in terms of providing quality services, having relationship, I would say if we're talking about direct work in the country, not through a reseller or not through the partner, then we would be limited to about 10 English-speaking countries.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to the language, maybe our students are a little biased here in the sense that all of them study at universities, all of them are business majors, and most of them are at top schools in their countries. And usually at business schools, at least some of the courses are offered in English. And at least looking at the we had here, obviously India, or English is the official language, but even when you go to countries like Argentina, Brazil, Chile, at least the students who participate in X-Culture, their courses are in English. And so,
no, that's right. And apart from English, Spanish is the second biggest, largest opportunity for us. I mean, all countries, which are Spanish-speaking countries, and countries which conduct education in Spanish, we could talk about product language, so that product is localized to that language, and we also support this plagiarism search in that language. But we could also say, like, as a business, do we operate in the third or fourth language? For example, as a business, we do not support German language right now. So we don't have people speaking German in our company that could effectively engage customers in Germany. And of course, the factor of being stationed remotely for some markets, it's a very big factor, like German-speaking countries. They really like local companies, and there are a few competitors there which we would not be competing at this time because we have much better opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah. Germans, they even have their own word for every international word. So, like, literally,
I wonder how do they do it? Do they catch up later? They hear about some word and then they
somehow they always, like, for everything and anything, they always come up with their own word. So
and they prefer lengthy words.
Yes. Pichu, I see your message here. You say that you have a question. If you do, just unmute your microphone and go ahead before we move on to the next question.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Pichu. Nice to meet you.
Yes. Hi. So my question was actually about the languages. So I saw on your website that you can provide services in English, German, Spanish, French, and Russian. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that refers to product to the list of languages that product supports, which means that the interface of the product supports that locale, and that we can search text in these languages. But actually, we can search much more languages. The only limits are the languages which don't use spaces as a delimiter between the words, which are mostly kind of Arabic languages. Any language that uses graphical element, not just typical letters, but like hieroglyphs, and some kind of rare Asian language, but not just rare, but I think hieroglyph is the proper word to describe the family of languages that we do not support. And if the language is written from right to left and not left to right, we also don't support languages which are written from right to left.
Okay, so you mean you're not limited to those 5 languages? Yeah.
Basically, the product, in terms of plagiarism research, we're not limited to that specific list, but that list specifically denotes the product interface language. So you can interact with the product in German, you can interact with the product in Spanish, and in a few other languages.
Okay, and for example, for Chinese or Japanese, but don't use the alphabet, like ABC alphabet. Is that?
Yeah. The language which don't use the alphabet, and where one symbol could mean a word or sometimes a phrase, like you mentioned Japanese, Chinese, and probably a handful of other Asian languages. Yeah, those languages are not supported because the engine is built around like language structure, which is found in more like Western and Slavic languages, basically the one which have the alphabet where one letter is just one letter and not a word.
Okay, so currently you can't provide this service in Chinese or?
For Japanese, yeah, for Chinese or Japanese, yeah, those are not supported.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Wonderful, yeah, thank you so much, Pichu. So then let's take a look at some of the commonly listed strengths and weaknesses of the company, and just to see if the students are on the right track, in your opinion.
Yeah.
So in terms of the strengths, this one I selected, highlighted, the yellow one, seems to summarize most of the typically named ones. And that is innovative technology, reliability, better matching system, so basically quality, then pricing, so not as expensive as some of the major players, and flexible, more secure data, no loss of data, and customer orientation, 99.9% uptime guarantee. Are those all of the strengths of your company, or there are more that they missed, or are any of those not true perhaps?
Yeah, literally, I believe this almost came verbatim from the website. So obviously, those are true. We could specify categories of strengths to comprehend them more in a more easy way, because it's easy to get lost in such a big list of things. Right. So we could say that one of the strengths of our company is technology. We're a technology-driven company, which means that we not simply, well, it means that our strength is not actually sales primarily, but creating high-quality products. And we look into different sales strategies to actually compensate for our worse competence in sales rather than product development. So we create really great products, and we innovate within those products, which means that we use latest technology. It's reliable. Within itself, the system itself is a state of the art in many ways, like its resilience, its reliability, the way we process data within the system, its security, etc. Sometimes it's hard, by the way, to relay that to customers so that they really understand how much effort was put to design that system. But what they could really feel is the ease of interface. I mean, that they literally don't need training to use it, that it's fast, the data is never lost, and they don't need to resubmit anything into the system, like the legacy system could sometimes lose some data, or the report is not delivered for any reason, etc. So that is one strength, so technological and product strength. The other strength is, I would say, rapidness with which we can change these things, add new things. So we would say adaptability of the company to the customer needs in terms of product is very remarkable. Like the speed at which we can introduce new features, change features, even create new products is unparalleled. We could literally create a technology within, for example, 6 months, and another 6 months launch a product. Would be our customer orientation. So we are very centered. It is good, but is even better. So with us, customers feel that, especially I'm talking about. So we provide full spectrum of onboarding services and installation, integrations, education, etc., trainings. And during the year, we have an SLA-based support department. SLA-based means that we provide response times in a specific given time range, and then we also provide resolution times so that we can reassure our customers that all of their cases, depending on complexity, will be resolved from 1 hour to 3 days at most. And that's very important for them, because they know that, and they don't expect any IT service to be perfect, but what they do expect is prompt communication. They do expect quick resolution in case of any incidents. And they also expect minimum downtimes, and if there are any downtimes, they want really to be notified ahead of time. Since our system basically has 99.9% uptime, it's literally about 8 hours per year. They don't feel any downtimes, but if it happens, it's very important to notify that. And although it's a small thing and not really even a part of the product, that's the part of customer service, and the whole picture is that customer feels that this company is responsive, this company provides good service in addition to having a good product. I would say that's still part of the one of 3 essential values that we can provide. And the third value, I would say, be our social mission, which is basically to not just create products as a regular business, but to create products which have innovative components in it. At the same time, we don't price out our customers. We keep the technologies cost efficient. So UniCheck has been designed from ground up. It's a completely new system, very robust. It uses all the latest technologies. It's like built at a Google level, like complexity standard. It's so cost efficient because it's new technology and its processes are optimized that we can than our competitors. And I believe that's a definition for innovation. You create something of greater value and give a better price. And sometimes you cut price even by 3 times. And they saved up to 70% of their expenses in comparison to competitors. It's very flexible in terms of our service. And I would say these are 3 key things. Of course, we could find out more things like moral qualities of our company. For example, we never give marketing information that is not in reality. When we claim regarding our databases and overestimated or underestimated, we give pretty much the correct picture. So we don't try to attract customers by false marketing. We basically say what's there, and of course, this does not give us probably as high growth rate as some of our competitors, but in the end, customers know and understand, and they wake up whether they have been sold really a good service or that they have been sold a good marketing.
And I'm glad we devoted a little bit more time to the strengths of the company, because again, unless the students know all those positives, they cannot really fully develop a good, effective marketing strategy to make those positives known. But now let's get to the weaknesses of the company. And so the students listed a number of things here. I'm curious to see what you have to say. Well, most of the teams say that the company is relatively new and the brand awareness is low, and obviously that's a weakness.
Yeah,
so
correct.
I don't think we need to talk much about that. So, and then another, again, listed right here in this answer, another weakness is that the company has limited access to existing databases of student papers. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, both are correct. Although the first statement that the company is new, that one is incorrect. The company has been established since 2014, so it's relatively, I would say, young, but not the same as like a 1-year-old company or 2-year-old company, and we're entering in our 4th year. So yeah, so we're not a new company. We're actually at the pace at which we're moving, we're an established company. And we measure it not just by years of existence on the market, but by the company structure, the thing that we have a board of decision makers, which makes our strategic decisions more correct and verified and proven. The fact that we have internal business processes much more mature than of a small business, etc. So I would say we have entered the phase of being a medium-sized company.
I think what the students meant was more brand awareness. So the customers are
brand awareness. The brand awareness is a challenge because we have had renaming this this last summer. But we haven't lost all the web links and all the SEO positions of the Unplug. All that strength is actually has been transferred to UniCheck. So whenever a person finds an article about our previous brand Unplug and there is a link to the old website, he or she will be redirected to UniCheck. But at the same time, it's very true. Very few people still know that what is UniCheck and who is UniCheck, and how they compare to existing companies. So brand awareness is also #1 goal for marketing for the next year, to make significant progress there. The secondary weakness was the databases, right?
Well,
yeah. So.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, yes. Limited access to the databases compared, I assume, to like Turnitin or other bigger.
So yeah, so this assumption is only partly true. The reason it is only partly true is because indeed we don't have as yet contracts with external databases partners of the data exchange. But the other part of this is that a lot of data is published in the open, and we don't need to have that contract in order to do the searches across those files. The open access movement, which gaining popularity, prompts many authors to publish, and they have the right to do so, to publish their work online on their individual websites. And that is still indexed by web search, so we can and do provide searches. So we do have significant coverage of those databases, but we cannot formally claim that we have partnerships with databases. And the second thing is that companies which do claim to have such partnership, they very often provide, I would say, incomplete picture, or they don't say all the truth. For example, they don't say that about how many databases they have from that specific provider, and they might just have one database, but they can give the name of the provider who has 100 databases. And also, the search algorithm matters, because even if you have access to vast amount of information like internet index, if your search algorithms are outdated, which we can responsibly say that UniCheck has new algorithms, and our search algorithm are 20%, sometimes up to 20–30% more efficient of the competitors. We produce search results without having a database, in many cases better than competitors which claim to have such databases. So they could, for example, find 60% of matches, and we at the same time could find 80% of matches using the internet search, just simply because that there is an overlap of the data stored in the database and the same data being published by the authors in the open, and it's indexed by the search engines.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now let's look at some of the other commonly named weaknesses and then move on to the other questions. So one thing people list here is differentiation. So a couple of teams said that they feel the company is not different enough from the competition, and it is not easy in this sort of business to offer something drastically different. So it's not really your fault, it's just the nature of the business that you all basically offer similar service, and it is hard to differentiate yourself from others. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I would say users typically would need some kind of very simple idea of how this service is different from the other services. Indeed, we can point out to many different things like better product, greater technology, very clear report, etc. But all of these are characteristics of a product and not really a differentiation for a business or like for a product. So yeah, I think
not even understand all those little
still we need to do our homework in terms of marketing differentiation, because not necessarily we might have technological differentiation that customer would value as a true value. And that is why we might need to come up with other strategies, how we would make us stand out, whether we make some social claims about how UniCheck helps improve education, and it does indeed. In fact, we have, even in our pricing policy, we have an essential package which is effectively offered for free, with some limitation, of course, but it's an entry point for any educational institutions to have a plagiarism tool across their campuses. So yeah, I can confirm to that.
Do other companies offer services to individuals, or they work only with universities? Like does
other companies?
Individuals?
Yeah.
They do?
yeah, some companies do offer services for individuals and some don't. And from those who do offer such services, they might use a different brand name for their service of for individual services. But mostly, if they do offer such service, it would come up on the same name.
It seems to me,
So if they have
I know you offer individual subscriptions, and it seems to me it's something that at least I haven't heard that Turnitin does it. Maybe they do, I just never researched. But it seems like that.
Yeah, they do have a service called UniCheck. It's not a secret. It's basically a product for students, which you can, yeah.
I didn't know that. All right, so now looking at the promotion channels, there are a couple of things here that are different, and I wanted to hear your ideas. So students provided all kinds of interesting suggestions and stuff, but so a number of teams, in fact, quite a few, almost half of them, said that one of the good ways to promote your service would be to put advertisement either on the textbook publishers' web pages, or some said maybe even in the textbooks themselves. Apparently, some of the publishers allow you to do that. Have you considered, and obviously, all the other channels that we discussed, I'm not going to get into much detail there, but so when we talk about textbook publishers, have you considered working with them, either placing ads on their websites or maybe writing the textbooks? And do you think that would be a viable strategy?
Yeah, so I would really love to read more in detail about the thoughts of the teams who consider this to be as a productive option. We did consider it. We didn't yet implemented it as a strategy, but I think it's something that we will or might see in the near future, because we would be doing implementing lots of different strategies of either bundling our services with the companies, or doing having some kind of other form of arrangement where companies have some relationship with the educational institutions, and UniCheck will come as an added value service, or they would become, for example, a reseller of our product.
Yeah. Many teams obviously say that you should promote online via social media. But what I personally see as a problem with those recommendations is, obviously, as a channel, it's perfect, it's wonderful. But I don't see many details provided in the students' work. So I would recommend to the students that if you are recommending, for example, let's say social media, it would be very useful if you also named which ones, and perhaps also outlined how exactly the strategy would work. So would it?
Yeah, for which purposes we would use social media, because it's a very vast channel. There is all kinds of people in there, and you would need to specify what kind of people we would need to reach and for what reason, and what would it give us as a company. Because yeah, there is a risk of simply investing money in social media, and it has been heard and being read, even sometimes being seen, and that works good for brand awareness, but there could be other even more efficient channels for increasing brand awareness.
But as I said, when it comes to online, there are literally dozens, if not hundreds, of possible specific outlets. You have, Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube. So it's always important to, specify which one exactly you mean, how exactly it would work. Would it be some sort of a webinar? Would it be an ad? Would it be, what audience should be targeted? So if you provide all those details and explain why they would work, that would be a much more valuable answer than when you just simply say advertise on Facebook. That doesn't tell us anything, because it's not actually.
Yeah, and I encourage you to focus on creative ways of online advertisement without focusing on ads. Ads require significant budgets, and in this niche, especially if we're talking about institutional purchase, it might come out with very little results, because you really either have to target the decision makers, and you need to understand that they are using that channel, and even that might not prompt them for action, because it's a system that they cannot. I mean, it would require considered time for them to make any changes in the arrangement of what the system that they use now, what they wanted to switch, etc. So yeah, it's kind of a big thing, and they cannot act promptly on that unless they have a burning pain. So I encourage you to think creatively and come up with the ways that don't require a large input in terms of marketing budget, but that could spread the information about UniCheck or deliver key information about UniCheck to the decision makers.
Right. And I'm looking at the next set of recommendations here in the marketing section. So there is one team that talks about using celebrity endorsements. using the opinion influencers, so famous professors, educators.
Yeah.
Again, good ideas, I suppose, but not enough detail. If you would maybe provide specific names of celebrities or professors who might be useful for this.
I have a suggestion.
I don't know, because it's hard to assess it, right?
Yeah, how about working with celebrity professors?
Right. Well,
I guess you can find.
well, there are all those kinds of people who have become very famous due to, for example, TED Talks. There are a number.
Because education has its own rock stars, and I think it's a great idea, but it would need to include the motivation for that specific person to engage in this kind of cooperation, and how would the company actually? It should be like a campaign or a project for the company. So the project should have a goal and means to achieve it, and what kind of role these people would play, and what kind of remuneration or value they will get for themselves for them to be motivated to participate in this.
Right. Same thing, for example, I see a number of teams here say, like, for example, mobile and smartphone marketing. Again, what exactly does it mean? So maybe it's a good idea, but you need to provide more details. There is one more comment that I would like to just comment myself. So this one is a typical one. So I'm not sure if it's possible to read it, but if you cannot see the letters, what this submission looks like is basically like a chapter from a textbook. And it says here, for example, strategies, communicate the benefits of our product, market and spending. So basically they just say essentially the goals and not what needs to be done specifically to reach those goals. Everything sounds correct, it has to be good, it has to be inexpensive, it has to be effective, but at the same time there are no details how to get there. And so one of the problems with this sort of a submission is that it's not very valuable for the company. So essentially, guys, you're listing here the things that you would like to achieve. What we want to hear from you is how do we get there with the specific steps.
Yeah, that's very correct.
Yeah, I just highlighted it just for that specific purpose. When it comes to finance and things like that, I mean, and HR, so many, if not most teams believe that when you want to work with the students, then you should rely on online recruitment and advertisement. And for that, you probably would not need to hire any personnel in the country where you operate, maybe other than some rare occasion. But most teams believe that when it comes to dealing with the universities, they feel that in most cases it would be necessary to have people on the ground who can either go from one school to another and pitch the idea, or if the school requests some sort of a demo, maybe so that there would be a live person they can meet with and provide that sort of demonstration. So the question we have to you, is that a viable strategy? Would it be too expensive? Are you open to the idea perhaps to hiring some sales representatives or maybe company representatives who could do that?
For some companies it could be a viable strategy. For example, they could hire regional directors in countries that they work in, territories that they work in, and those people would stay on the ground. They would physically be located in the country, and they would have ability to travel and meet decision makers of many local institutions in person. Basically, they would be people on the ground, and UniCheck didn't choose those strategy, not because it wouldn't get efficient results, but because we believe we could find more efficient strategy given our current capitalization and basically funds that we have for that opportunity. So it would be quite expensive to maintain all this personnel in different countries, and there are alternative ways to have people on the ground yet not hire people on the ground. So that's my suggestion to you, to think of those options. How would we not hire people but still have representatives on the ground?
And that's exactly what many teams say. They say that hiring full-time staff would be too expensive, but
so there should be other way, and I encourage you to look into ways. And I really don't want to give you all cards, open all the cards, because you might come out with some ways that we didn't think about. But if I give you right away answers, then you might be just limited you might condition yourself that that's the answer and there isn't anything else.
But in general, you are open to the idea of having some sort of commission-based contract personnel.
Yeah, that's a very realistic idea. In fact, that's something that we are looking at right now. But the specific form, the implementation of it, I encourage you to think about different ways. And you might just read about any kind of business but you can take an ad tech sphere and see how other companies scale. How do they actually offer their services in different continents and different countries, especially younger companies which are only starting. Well, we're not only starting, but in fact, I'm talking about the companies which don't have the luxury of opening up offices in other countries. That's very, very expensive.
Another issue that comes up here from time to time, so some companies say that, I mean, some teams or students recommend that you have this kind of referral strategy where people, when they refer a company, I mean, a university, a school, or a student to you, they may get some sort of a percentage. And I don't know, to me, it seems like a little bit too complicated to trace who referred whom and who gets what. But then also some teams recommend that you maybe have a contract with a local, basically outsourcing company. So there are apparently enough companies out there that can hire those contract workers, sales representatives for you. Obviously, the challenge is that you are several degrees of separation from those people. Becomes more difficult, quality control becomes more difficult, but at the same time, you don't have to deal with all the issues of recruitment and compensation and retention. You basically just put the goal out there and then just pay a percentage of the sales. What's your response to that? Any of those are viable?
Yeah. So I would really want to give you the framework of how to solve this business problem. So on one hand, we have us, a producer. We produce a product or a service or both, and on the other hand, we have a consumer. So we, as producer, are interested to have as fewer steps as possible to reach the end user, unless that step is necessary to scale effectively, because we don't open offices in the other countries and we have to have some kind of partnerships in those regions. So the overall thinking is correct. We need to have some kind of representation of our business in the country. And I would encourage you not to stay fixed with the idea that there have to be individuals hired or somehow dispatched locally on the ground to the end user institution to have communication and to have business with them. Because right now we're living in 21st century world. There is a communication medium like email, phone, and other channels, effective channels, which are possible to use to conduct business. We're stationed in Ukraine, basically in Kiev, and we have been successfully selling our service to government organizations in the United States. So that gives you an idea of what's possible. But of course, we're talking about efficiency. So efficient way would be to have a representation. And you may think of individual representation, which was stated in this idea, but there could be also a business representation, and what kind of form that business representation can take.
Right. Yeah. We are almost out of time, and I still would like to take a look at a few reports from the last semester and comment on some of the typical problems and maybe some of the good things as well. But again, we still have a few students here. Pichu, Nimesh, Lord, are you guys planning to say something, get feedback, or you're comfortable with just listening? I want to take the opportunity away from you in case you wanted to talk.
Hi everyone. Can I have
yes,
1 minute?
Yes.
Hi everyone. I want to add one thing about commercial databases about this problem, because it's a very often problem. And I want to add that a lot of vendors usually say that they have a big database of different journals, of student database, everything else, but nobody can measure this database, first of all. And a second one is problem because a lot of people, a lot of teachers, a lot of administrators always make comparison between different vendors, and they always check in percentage into the report. But it's very tricky things, because a percentage is not only one thing that can measure really measure similarity and potential plagiarism, because actually we saw one independent research comparison between different vendors, and that research was made I think more than 20 different papers were checked within 5 different vendors, and it showed that very high percentage. You can show very high percentage of similarity, but when you see the report, when you open the report, you will see a lot of common phrases, a lot of different phrases that mark it as a similarity. And second problem is that a lot of sources are outdated, and it's the main problem of big archives, that they can show you like 90% of similarity, but when you really open report and really see all sources, you will see that a lot of sources are outdated and you can't actually see them. And in this comparison, we actually have very good results. Comparison were made between 5 the main competitors, and we actually, as you mentioned, Turnitin has big databases, but we had 88 points after all checked papers, and Turnitin had only 73 points, and that's why it's when you comparison just only with similarity percentage, it's incorrect.
Yeah, I would summarize that students need to understand that in business, very often businesses sell not just the actual service, but there is an aspect of marketing, and they sell ideas that people buy in addition to services, and they can sell products which appear to be better than they are, and they need to consider that when they think about strategies and how to present strengths, and maybe to not hide, but actually even sometimes make your weaknesses into strengths. And we see examples of that when some of our competitors take a feature in their product which really is a weakness and they present it as a strength. That's kind of paradoxical, but that's the business world.
All right, yep. Let me also take a minute and just show some of the reports from the last semester and maybe provide some of the comments from myself as a professor. I have to read a lot of those reports and grade them and give you, grades. And so some of the things that drive me, if not crazy, then make me upset. And maybe also Ivan and Serhiy will be able to add something more. So obviously, up until last year, the company was called Unflagged, so the name has changed a few months ago. So disregard that. But anyway, here is one typical report from Team 13 on Friday the 13th. But anyway, executive summary. I don't like it. And the reason I don't like it is because it's plain text. It's impossible to figure out what it says unless you actually read it. And now imagine the company, the client, as well as the professor gets 100, maybe even 200 of them. We're talking about a lot of paper. To read one page of plain text, it will take me at least 2 minutes. And I don't have that time, so it may be wonderful. But I almost don't want to read it just because it's so, boring and time-consuming. So my recommendation would be to use a strategy that is more like this. So let me just show you one here. Maybe if I can find something.
I hear some kind of noise, and I'm not sure if only I hear it.
Oh,
actually, there could be.
Maybe let me try to repeat. Maybe there was a connection problem. So what I was saying, what I was saying is that this particular submission may contain wonderful ideas. But as always, when I receive a lot of submissions, and as a professor, I have to grade at least 100 reports, and the clients may get 100 or even 200 reports, I would like to be able to see the main ideas quickly and efficiently. And obviously, first, I would go to the executive summary. I cannot read all 100 reports because that's like 5,000 pages. So I would like to see the ideas right away.
Reading.
So can you hear me? Is the sound okay?
Yeah, it's good. It's much better.
So looking at this executive summary, it's 2 pages of plain text. And so for me, it would be hard to read it just because it's, it's plain text. So a strategy like this would work better for the executive summary. So it's a different team. So they have a nice bullet list. And so it's a little bit easier to jump from one idea to another. I have no idea if these proposals, if these ideas are better, but it is that easier to navigate. So that's one thing. Another thing that I would like to comment is something like this. So this is a typical report. It looks, perfectly nicely formatted, other than the title page is kind of boring. There is no picture, there is no graphics, but I suppose that's fine. They even apparently suggest,
maybe those are Unix lovers.
yeah, well, but yeah, but at least, you know, they're trying to do something fine. But when you look at the executive summary, it has to be laser sharp. I mean, it has to be very, very precise, very, very short. And yet they put here words like, this document describes our assessment of. We know that it describes your assessment of. There is no need to put those useless words in the executive summary. Or after researching, we found that. Well, we know you did a research, and we know that what you found you present here. So there is no need to say those kind of qualifying phrases. Drop them, get directly to the point.
Yeah, think of it like a juice. So you extract a juice from a fruit, and
Right.
the juice is the executive summary. You throw away everything, all the rest.
Right. So you want to be as precise, as concise as possible. There is another one. I mean, guys, couldn't you spend 5 extra minutes to format your pages? You know, like, I mean, it seems like, you know, write something. But I mean, how could you put the list of the team like this on 2 pages? I mean, it just doesn't look professional. You know, you look at a title page like that, you don't want to read the rest. And so again, make sure that you spend enough time to format it properly. As I said, I gave you here an example of a better looking title page. You know, you have some graphics and stuff. I like that they also have a table with a list of the team members, and they also say who did what and provide a percentage. Obviously, for the company, it doesn't matter, but for me as a professor, I want to know. So if my student is on the team, for example, let's imagine that is, well, it's not my student, but if it was, and I see that the person did only 5% of all the work, that tells me something. I want to know that. So I would include a table like this. But anyway, I don't want to go into too many details. I would like to ask Ivan, you probably have seen enough of those reports in the past. Anything that you would recommend they can do to make them more readable for you, or to make them, the reports, more appealing, more, I don't know, useful to you? Things that they shouldn't do and things they should do, perhaps.
Yeah, the general theme across pretty much all of the reports is that the focus is too broad. Narrow your focus. Try to solve more specific problems, and to do that, in fact, make a list of them. So if you choose a topic of for example, identifying effective marketing channels for UniCheck product for individuals, even if you do not describe in detail all of the possible channels, but you pick 2 of those channels and you really do hard work to make to write down the strategy for those 2 channels, that even 1 channel, that will be of much better value if you give us 100 channels and don't say a word about them.
And I want to thank you, thank you to all X-Culture teams, because actually last year we read all reports and make our own summary, and we actually implement a lot of features, and we actually made rebranding, but in one report, not in one, I think more than in 10 reports, it was like, you should change your name, you should change your name. And we actually,
this was a confirmation for us,
Yeah, and as Ivan said, we are a community-driven company. I also want to say that we are X-Culture teams driven company, and we are always listening and reading reports from X-Culture teams.
So take it seriously, because the client will read your reports.
Yeah, it's not for the check mark. Your great ideas will be taken into business, and even if that's a possibility, and even if that's a small possibility, those of you whose ideas we will take into business, and I guess it would probably make sense for us to make some report after some period of time, which ideas have been implemented, which haven't been, and you might learn about that. That will give you probably a good motivation and reassurance in your own strength, and that you can trust your thoughts and analysis and take it into real business situations.
We are almost out of time, but I see a number of new people here. I see also here Sulman, and I see here Strategic. I'm not sure if that's the name or just the account name. Did you guys wanted to ask anything? Did you want to maybe share what you have so far and get feedback? Don't be shy, because that's your last opportunity. We're literally about to stop. Pitcher, I see you unmuted your microphone, so please go ahead.
Yes, I do have a question. So because the aim of this X-Culture challenge is actually to find the most promising market. So I assume from what you said earlier, that you're not considering the Asian market, like Chinese or China or Japan, because of technical issues, I guess. So within Europe, can you tell us, do you have some figures, or can you tell us what are the biggest market in Europe, like specifically, what are the countries where you can make the most sales?
Yeah. So the criteria for you to pick a country in Europe are, in fact, in the regions that we work, which include North America, Europe, Latin America, a few countries in Africa, specifically South Africa, but also Nigeria and a few others. We also work in Southeast Asia, although we do not work in China because education there is English is not primary language of education there. Although we could work with Hong Kong, and actually I think we might have even a client from there. It's quite an international area there. Just look at the Wikipedia pages for those countries and how many educational institutions they list in there, and if and also try to learn a little bit more about how controlled that educational system is, how funding is basically spread between those institutions. Is it government funding? What's the part of the private funding? The more institutions of private funding there are, the easier for UniCheck to enter that market, because the deal cycle is much shorter. But even if it's 100% public educational system, just look at how many K-12 schools there are, how many, in comparison to other countries, how many higher educational institutions there are, primarily accredited institutions which offer some kind of a degree, not the training centers. And that will give you an idea of which are the better countries. So there is a correlation between probably the size of the country, its population density, because you have to have some kind of number of schools and universities per capita. So I would say a number of population is quite an indicator about the potential in the market.
But as I understand, let's say, for example, there is a student in Hong Kong or Singapore.
Yeah.
So, and let's say, you don't work in the country yet, but there is a university that the student thinks might be interested to be your client.
Yeah.
Would it be a problem to go and talk to the dean of that business school, for example, or principal of that school, and see if they would be interested? And then if only one university signs up and gets a contract,
that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. As long as we don't have any legal constraints, like, for example, they want to receive payment from certain type of organization and we do not qualify for that type, or for those requirements, because they might have some requirements to the number of staff that we employ in a specific country. As long as we don't hit that administrative or bureaucratic wall, then we can work with that institution. Or that could be a very normal entry rules, which we simply don't meet as yet. But in fact, if regulations are relaxed and we can work directly with that institution, with the legal entities that we have in Europe, in America, then it's perfectly fine. And we have some territories and countries where we just have one client, and that could be even entire educational system of the territory.
Right. But in any case, it's always a good idea, if you think there is a market there and if you think there is a client there, go and talk to them and see what they say.
Yes, it's just for experience of a student. But if you really want to think like a businessman, you wouldn't look into those kind of markets. You would really look into countries where you would have tens or hundreds or thousands of institutions, and how you would approach them in a bulk way. So you don't go from one institution to another institution, but you rather somehow try to reach them out with an arm that will allow you to do either massive communication to them, or through some kind of partners, or even having some kind of representatives on the ground.
Right. All right, so it is 11 o'clock. We've spent our hour. Thank you so much. So the early track students, you still have a little over a week to finish up the project. And if you have any questions remaining, just email them to us. We will relay them to the company, and hopefully there will be enough time to provide the answers. For the late track students, you have just started. So you still have about 6 weeks to go, 6 or even 7 weeks to go. So obviously, if you have any questions, first watch the first webinar. That's where the company was introduced in more detail. You probably will find most of the answers there. But then if you have even more questions, again, send us to us. We will forward them to the company, and you still have enough time to work on it. So hopefully you'll do a wonderful job too. And we plan to have one more webinar in the second week of November, if I remember correctly. So for the late track students, you will have an opportunity at that time, again, to present what you have, to share your input so far, and then maybe receive feedback. So what we'll try to do at that time, I think we will try to find three teams that will actually do more like formal presentations, and then maybe receive feedback on that. So we'll see if there will be any volunteers for that work. All right, other than that, I think we're going to stop here. And as said, if any of the questions have not been answered, just email us and we'll forward your messages to the company.
Yeah, be specific, remember. It's rather more important to paint smaller and fewer number of paintings rather than to make a very big, large painting where nobody can really understand anything or make sense of that.
Yeah, yeah. Always, if I were a student, I would always ask a question, is this line of text something that the company can take and act on? Or is it
That's
something
a good criteria,
the company can do? Because again, you don't want to copy and paste a Wikipedia article about the country to describe the country. I mean, first of all, they can do it themselves. Second, too general. Always think, okay, this is what I think the company should do. This is why. And so always look at the
you can actually have a small interaction within your team and give whatever you produce as a suggestion to another team player and say and ask, is it clear for you what I'm asking you or suggesting for you to do? And he says, well, yeah, but it's very general.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good indication that you need to actually make it more specific.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much, Ivan, Serhi, everybody else who is here watching us. So I see a number of people joined just a few minutes ago. I wish you joined us earlier in case you wanted to talk, but we'll have one more webinar later on in November. And for now, thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for choosing UniCheck once again. We're very glad that you have chosen our company, and we would really want to have you succeed in this task and really see the practical value of it. You're really gaining experience. Don't forget about this.
Thank you so much.